wonder what's hot in the baking world right now? It's not even that complicated. You get store-bought croissants, cut them open, shove in some store-bought cookie dough, and that's it. Hi everyone, I'm Gemma Stafford, professional chef, cookbook author, and creator of Bigger Bolder Baking. Welcome to Need to Know, your go-to podcast for everything baking entertainment. From the latest trends,
this is the viral scrambled pancake trend.
What? To the tips and tricks you crave.
We discovered that if you take apple peels, toss them in a little cinnamon and sugar, and bake them for about an hour in the oven, you get a really lovely treat.
Plus exclusive interviews with baking pros.
Hey, it's Liz from the Sugar Geek Show. Thanks for having me, Gemma.
We've even got the Bold Baking Hotline to answer all of your baking queries and questions.
Is a Dutch oven really necessary for baking bread, and what difference does it make?
Yes, I think we probably would agree on that, do we, Oni?
Yeah, good. So join us every Sunday for your new weekly baking ritual. It's everything you need to know.
This episode is brought to you by Board Bia's Spirit of Ireland program. Please visit irishfoodanddrink.com/Spirit of Ireland to learn more about the rich history and renaissance of Irish spirits.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
So you don't charm the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil runs his groove in them rhythm and blues that sound. It's gonna get you sun in the air.
Welcome back to The Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson.
And it's Negroni Week.
Yeah.
It is Negroni Week. Is this the 10th anniversary Negroni Week? Is this 11. The okay, wow.
Yeah. So and if I remember correctly, was it invented in 1911? No, it was 1919. Right? When was the Negroni?
The Negroni?
1919 sounds right. I know it was Count Camillo Negroni, who, fun fact, he lived such a wild life. People thought he was a myth for a really, really long time until someone, I don't need to tell you who it is. His name begins with D and ends with Avid Wandrich, found out that he was actually a real guy,
right.
And led this mythic, larger than life existence, and invented what I think is one of the best drinks of all time.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most enduring, that's for sure. I'm just real quickly, jumping on the old internet here to see if I can see. It doesn't say this the 10th. You think they would say that?
It started in 2013.
Okay. All right.
So, and then the Negroni, I just confirmed, it was 1919. So, in our lifetime, we got to experience the 100th anniversary of the Negroni, right, kind of at the height of its kind of very, very quick growth, to where, you can go almost anywhere these days and find a Negroni or a variation on their menu year round. And, here in California, it's 58 degrees right now. It's 9 a.m. And, it feels like, and it's going to be up in the 80s later today. So it's like that transitional seasonal, summer to fall, which is really great because, I'm wearing a sweatshirt right now, but I'm going to have to put on a t-shirt later. And I know, Greg, you love your tank top and jacket season.
You know it, baby.
So that's kind of where we're at right now here in California. But, that's kind of also for me going around and checking out all the different places in there, the different Negronis for Negroni Week. It's cool to see, just how versatile that drink is, in its variations. It really is a plug and play, or an expansion. Just kind of Phil Ward would say it's like Mr. Potato Head in a lot of ways. Swapping out an eye for an eye or a nose for a nose, and that being your base spirit and your bitter, and it was started by a magazine in Campari in 2013, but everyone's welcome, it seems, to the Negroni Week. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's Imbibe Magazine's thing. And, it also involves the day of service, which I believe was yesterday. Well, by the airing of this, it would have been Tuesday. And I just went onto the website just to check it out real fast because I've been too busy to pay attention. But there's a video on the website that is actually of me. It's me, Joaquin Simo.
Surprise.
Me making Negronis. This video is from, I think, like 7 years ago. Pretty crazy. But it still holds up.
Anyway, let me ask you guys this, actually, on the topic of the Negroni, because we're talking about how plug and play it is. And this is an ongoing discussion that I have with a dear friend of mine who is going to listen to this. And I'm really enjoying imagining him getting furious that I'm posting this, and he's not going to be able to respond as he's listening to it. But how far away from that original formula of gin, Campari, and red vermouth do you think you're allowed to stray and still say something is a Negroni variation? Like, what is to the two of you like the heart of this drink?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the idea is that, you know, for us to be so like open and broad about a Negroni and what that means is kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum from like us getting upset about how far away from a martini can you get and still call it a martini. And, you know, the 90s definitely fucked that up. But, you know, I think the key ingredients are having a bitter and a fortified wine of some sort. You know, it could be sherry instead of vermouth. I don't know. But like, but I think the base spirit is kind of like the original swappable ingredient in that. And, you know, because when you think about just whether it's whiskey or brandy in a Boulevardier or like mezcal, I mean, it's like it works every time, and at its heart, you can still get it, you know, what it is. But, you know, it's for those of us seasoned bartenders and drinkers, it's easy to go down, you know, the list a cocktail bar provides, their menu, and you can kind of spot, you know, like after a while, you're like, oh, that's like a baijiu, or that's like a martini riff or old fashioned. It's like, oh, that's like a Negroni, but, you know, with very, very different ingredients, but at its core, you know, you still have that bitter. I still think, I don't know, Negronis to me are refreshing. When we go camping, I always make batches of Negronis, and that's for my breakfast detail. Yeah. So, you know,
I mean, Sother, what do you
I'm
think?
in the camp
You're more of a traditionalist.
Yeah, I am. It's true, but you know, I'm in the camp of it's a template, not necessarily a hard and fast recipe. You know, I think even we adjust the volume of each ingredient to suit our needs. But you know, at Amore Amargo, you know, we say we've only made 3 drinks in our 13-year history: the old fashioned, the Manhattan, and the Negroni. And we define the Negroni as spirit, vermouth, bitters, and Amaro. You know, that means we can exchange any of those at any time, right? And we do. So I think I'm more in the strange sense that I am definitely a traditionalist and a classic when I make food and drink, classically minded, I should say. I think I still this is such a template for me that we can substitute. You know, you can use any spirit, any vermouth, any Amaro, and then you know, we trick them out with any bitters, right? So and the ratios can change based on what those things are. So we can drift as far away as we want. I know that Negroni Week, of course, wants us to center the thing around Campari, but you know, I happen to be wearing a Suze t-shirt today. You can't see it in the thing there. You know, the white Negroni doesn't involve Campari, and it gets a lot of play as well. So I think it's for me, it's completely any of the components is maneuverable, very malleable drink.
Yeah, right. And lest we forget, the original Negroni was itself a variation. It's a spinoff of the Americano, which is Campari and red vermouth and soda water. And it took a real innovator,
and that's
Count Camillo Negroni.
Another drink.
Right.
Exactly. I know. Everything is, whoops, well, there goes my light in here. Sorry, Patreon fans. I'm in the dark for the rest of this episode. But yeah, you know, it takes a real innovator to walk up to that drink and just say, hey, you know, this soda water is great, but what if we did gin instead?
Yeah.
What if we swapped this water out for hard liquor? Yeah. I bet it'd be pretty good. And it was.
Yeah.
That's funny because I drink a lot of whiskey soda highball, you know, at home. So it'd be like me telling my wife, it's like, hey, what if we tried this whiskey soda, but instead of soda, it was gin? Yeah. You know, it's like just drinking whiskey and gin. Oh, that's funny. Actually, those work really well together. I'll have to find the cocktail. There's a classic cocktail somewhere, and I'm blanking on the name. Oh, it's brandy. It's brandy and gin together. It's the Delmonico cocktail.
Oh, Delmonico, yeah. Suffering Bastard, of course, has whiskey and gin, and then, of course, the Sharpie mustache. Not necessarily a classic, but trying to get there.
Modern classic.
Yeah. Thanks.
Give it another 60 years. You'll
Thanks, Chris Elford.
You'll be in some dusty old books in no time.
Speaking of things that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, speaking of dusty and old, there we go. We're all on the same page.
Oh, geez. You guys are really setting me up for success with that segue here. Joining us in the studio from Ming River Baijiu, we have Derek Sandhaus, who I can vouch for anyone who can't see him is neither dusty nor old. Derek, thank you so much for youthfully joining us on the Speakeasy today. It's good to have you.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to be here.
So first of all, where are you? This surprised me a little bit when you told me where you were coming to us from.
Sure. So I'm currently based in Athens, Greece. I just get this out of the way. I married a diplomat a while ago. So I've spent a lot of my life living in different countries and usually switch every 3 or 4 years.
Which one's your favorite? Cool. You can tell us. It's okay.
I mean, I think this might feel like a cop-out, but probably Greece and China for very different reasons. But China is a very exciting, vibrant place that really feels like a lot of the world's future lies there, whereas Greece is a very laid back kind of easy living place that feels like a lot of the world's past is there. So yeah.
Yeah, you got your
we had our moment. We're good.
Yeah, you got your feet in both camps, a little future, a little primitive. Well, let's talk about your time then maybe in China, because I assume that's where the origin story of your connection to Ming River Baijiu comes in.
Yeah, so I graduated university in 2005, and I moved to China the next year, and ended up planning to live there about 6-12 months. I had a job teaching English in Shanghai, and I thought I would do that for a little while, figure out what I wanted to do with myself, and go back to America and start out on that. But what I discovered is I really didn't like teaching, but I really like China. So I ended up staying in Shanghai, working in the private sector there about 5 years. And pretty early on, I discovered that I was very into writing and editing. So my job for the last few years I was out there was managing an English language publishing house that wrote books on Chinese history and culture. And that's kind of where I got my grounding in most of my passion for the country.
Well, as we know, the literature to booze pipeline is a fertile one. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about how you made that leap from, spreading knowledge and culture to spreading knowledge and culture, but in a slightly drunker way.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we were publishing at this place books about Chinese history and culture, and there was like an overarching mission of this publishing house where we wanted people that weren't from China to be able to better understand it, because a lot of us, I'm from Kansas. I did not learn anything about China in school growing up. Not in history classes, not in social studies, nothing. So
I remember learning about they have a pretty large wall, but that was I think the extent of the education I got in public school in Virginia.
Exactly. I think the Boxer Rebellion, the Communist Revolution were mentioned in passing, but not a whole lot beyond that. So what we were trying to do was to explore topics that people might already be interested and be excited about, and use those as a window into China, which can be very kind of intimidating to people who don't grow up in that culture, because the language is obviously very different and very challenging. And people don't have a lot of cultural touchstones with China if they don't grow up with a cultural connection to it. So we were publishing books about rock and roll, art, movies, various things from a Chinese perspective. And then I was at a lunch, and if you've ever done business in China, or if you've heard about business in China, there is a lot of alcohol that happens during business lunches in China. So I was at this business lunch where there was a lot of bye-JYO being poured, and I was being asked to do a lot of shots with the people at this lunch. And I, at the time, didn't care for bye-JYO. I had it only in passing, kind of as a gag where someone would surprise me with a bottle and make me drink it to watch my reactions. And at the end of this meal, it was, I don't know, 1 p.m. and it was time to go back to the office. And I was a little tipsy. So I was thinking, I'm not getting work done today, but why would anyone get bombed on 50-something% alcohol in the middle of the day and then go about their business? And then the longer I thought about this, the more I realized I don't know the answer to that question. Nothing in my life has prepared me to answer that question. I didn't grow up drinking bye-JYO. I didn't know bye-JYO existed before I moved to China. So I began thinking like there might be something here. Like there might be there's definitely a cultural difference between the way Chinese drink and the way I grew up drinking. So if I could just figure out what that was, it might help me better appreciate this drink, for one. And it could also help me like bridge some gaps while I was living in China, because one of the weird things that you encounter there, living there as a foreigner, is that everyone's drinking all the time, foreign, Chinese, what have you, but the Westerners that are going there for the most part are drinking Western spirits and cocktails at Western style bars or Western style nightclubs. And Chinese are mostly drinking bye-JYO at the dinner table at restaurants. And those two groups are rarely drinking together. So I surmise that if I could go from being someone that didn't much care for bye-JYO to someone who understood and appreciated it, that would enrich my time in China, because I would be able to participate in the local social life in a more, full way than I had been able to up to that point. So that was kind of the origin of the idea, but I didn't really get down to it until maybe 2 or 3 years later, when my then girlfriend, now wife, became a diplomat for the United States State Department. And we left China, I thought for good. But when the assignments were going out at the end of her training, they said, you're going to Chengdu, China. So a couple months had passed. I moved right back to China. But this time it was a place I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a job there. I had written a couple of books on history at that point, but nothing on alcohol. And one of the first things I decided is I need something to do with my time. So I had this bye-JYO book idea. And so I thought, let me see what there is to this. And then I started meeting people at parties who worked at bye-JYO distilleries. And by sheer dumb luck, I had ended up in Sichuan province, which I didn't know at the time, but is the leading producer of bye-JYO that makes about 70% of all the bye-JYO that's produced anywhere in the world. So it was kind of the
which is a massive amount. We should stop and say, right? Like bye-JYO eclipses whiskey and vodka consumption globally, right? So if you're at the place that produces 70%, this place is producing a pretty large chunk of the alcohol consumed in the world in total, not just bye-JYO, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the highest consumed alcohol in the world, right? I mean, it's like tens of billions of dollars ahead of like Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
Annually. Like that's crazy when you, as a Westerner, I'm from Oklahoma, Derek. So we're from the same. When you're talking about that, I was like, oh, I know what you're saying, man. I get it. So that's a hell of a leap from where you're from to like culturally, just it's fascinating. But yeah, it's the highest consumed spirit, just alcohol, I think in general in the world. Right. Like it's just mind boggling that like most people, in the United States have never heard of it,
Correct.
So it's wild.
Well, I think the latest statistics I've seen on it place the annual bye-JYO production at about 7 billion liters, which is more than whiskey, vodka, and I think tequila and rum combined in terms of the global output. So it is hugely significant in terms of volume, but also in terms of value. In terms of the most valuable spirits brands in the planet, you have 6 of the top 10 are bye-JYO distilleries. And I think the number 1 bye-JYO distillery, bye-JYO Moutai, is worth something outrageous, like 20 times what a company like Johnny Walker is worth.
Yeah.
So
good God.
It's an enormous category, and I realized pretty early on into learning about it that it was a much bigger informational lift than I was expecting, because bye-JYO, a lot of people have encountered it without realizing that bye-JYO is not a distilled spirit. It is a family of distilled spirits. So bye-JYO literally just means white alcohol. It's a term that the Chinese started using in the 1950s to replace the older word for bye-JYO, which was shaojiu, which means burnt alcohol. It's the same word you find in Korea with soju, Japan, shochu. Just basically means liquor. So bye-JYO is coming from a country that has been making alcohol, give or take 7,000 to 9,000 years. Has been making distilled spirits for about 1,000 years, and is geographically enormous, about the size of continental Europe. So these different parts of China had been distilling different spirits for a very long time before someone from northeastern China tried the liquor that they made in southwestern China and realized they were completely different drinks. So within the bye-JYO category, you have about 12 officially recognized spirits, but I would place the number upwards of 15 that are distinct spirits that are called bye-JYO in China.
So then what, and also point of order here, is it bye-JYO or bye-JYO? Because you're pronouncing it, I will default to you, but I'd been pronouncing it the other way for a very long time.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the Chinese government, also in the 1950s, when they were unifying a lot of things in that country, unified the way that their language is written in like Roman characters. So with our alphabet, the way that words are pronounced are not the way that they're pronounced in English. And so bye-JYO ends in an IU. And in Chinese, the IU vowel combination makes a like yo sound, like yo, what's up? So it's bye-JYO, not bye-JYO.
Well, I'm glad we.
Yeah, you heard it here first, listeners. That was news to me.
Oh man. Okay, cool.
So in that case, what makes bye-JYO bye-JYO by your definition? Like, what is it just any unaged spirit that's produced in the country of China, or is there something? Is there some other common thread that runs through it?
Well, the way that I define bye-JYO as a category is any traditional Chinese grain spirit that's made without any additives and is fermented usually in a solid state with something called chu, which is a microorganism culture that's harvested on other grains as well. So within that, there's a lot of different variety, but all of the bye-JYO has that in common. One gentle corrective I might offer is that bye-JYO, at least modern bye-JYO, is usually aged, just not aged in wood. So it's usually aged in clay jars or stainless steel for 6 months to several years.
Okay, well, that is also breaking news to me. I was not aware of that. Hey, HRN listeners, this is Greg Benson,
Sother Teague,
and Damon Boelte from The Speakeasy. And we're excited to share with you our recent episode number 564, especially if you're passionate about the craft and culture of Irish spirits.
Yeah, Andy Ferreira from Cask joined us to discuss the evolution of modern Irish on-premise and mixology scene. We also spoke with Tim Herlihy about the success of Lost Irish here in the United States. And finally, Dara Flanagan from Board Bia gave us some fascinating insights into what lies ahead for Irish spirits in the United States.
It was awesome. And if you're curious about the heritage and future of Irish spirits, I cannot recommend enough exploring the Spirit of Ireland program. It's a comprehensive look at the rich history and renaissance of Irish spirits, featuring interviews with master distillers, barrel coopers, and a lot more. It even offers a sensory journey through the barley fields and barrel houses of Ireland, which is really cool.
Yeah, amazing. And so for those of you who want a deep dive into the world of Irish spirits after listening to our recent episode, number 564, that seems like a lot, and it is a lot of episodes, the Spirit of Ireland program offers an educational journey that goes way beyond the glass, taking you into the heart of Irish spirit making with stories, traditions, and innovations. Please visit irishfoodanddrink.com/Spirit of Ireland to learn more, and find our recent episode wherever you listen to podcasts.
Sláinte.
Okay, so you have a massive, like an almost unimaginably big industry here, multiple different styles, and a huge swath of different ways of producing this across a gigantic country. You'd have to be crazy to look at this market and say, I want a piece of that.
Well, crazy is maybe not the right word. Certainly a masochist. I definitely, when I started this process, I was talking to one of my friends from Shanghai that I was like, I think I'm going to write my next book about bye-JYO. And he told me about another friend he had in Shanghai that was in marketing, who told him about a study he'd heard. So like already we're like, some guy told me this levels of rigor. But this is, he was basically saying that there's taste thresholds for when you go from liking something or not liking something to liking it. Like if we all think back to when we were kids and tried coffee for the first time, it was kind of gross. We drank it a few times and then we flipped over. Like something in our brain adjusted and we started liking that. It's the same for a lot of spirits that people encountered. And so he told me, this guy did a study on bye-JYO. Do you know what the like taste threshold is on bye-JYO? And I was like, I don't know. What is it? And he said 300 tastes. So when I started writing about bye-JYO, this was like 2010, so 2011, so still like at the tail end of blogging. So I started a blog called 300 Shots at Greatness, where I was kind of live tracking myself drinking shots of bye-JYO to get from the point where I didn't much care for it to when I had developed a taste to it, to test that theory if it would take me 300 to go from someone that didn't like bye-JYO to someone that liked it. I'm happy to report it didn't take 300. It was actually pretty early on in my exploration of bye-JYO when I learned that there were different styles of it. Then I could go to a liquor store and buy 5 different spirits that are made in China and called bye-JYO and taste them side by side. And I realized, well, I don't like this one, but this one's pretty good. And this one's even better. And then I could start, really like breaking it down and getting more granular into what I liked about certain styles. And like at some point over the like now thousands of bye-JYOs that I've tried in my day, something flipped in all of the categories. I like them all now. So
right.
So it is possible to go from knowing nothing about an impossibly complicated category to really developing an appreciation for it. And luckily, there's more resources out there today than when I was trying to do it.
Right. Well, thanks to you, you sort of pioneered and created some of those resources. Let's skip forward a little bit from your book writing task and your falling in love with the category to the origins of the Ming River Baijiu that we have right in front of us. So how did this come to fruition?
So I published my first book about bye-JYO in 2014. This was the year after I left China for good, and I was getting a lot of inquiries from business people, both within and without China, who wanted to get into the bye-JYO industry because they heard a lot of people live in China and maybe they could make some money that way. Because I didn't live there, I reached out to some guys that I knew who had started a bye-JYO focused cocktail bar in Beijing, which was actually the first of its kind. Because skip ahead a little bit, bye-JYO is not traditionally served in cocktails. It's usually served neat at room temperature with food. So what they were doing was pretty cool, and they were getting a lot of interest from bye-JYO distilleries who were going to their bar and saying, you have a lot of kind of atypical bye-JYO drinkers at your bar. They had young Chinese people, they had women. Bye-JYO is in China typically like an old man's drink by reputation. And they had foreigners drinking bye-JYO there. So they said, you are appealing to a bunch of demographic groups that we are not successful with currently. So can we work together? So we, crossed paths. We got in touch with each other, decided we both had opportunities to share with one another in bye-JYO. In kind of consulting work. So let's work together. And we'd formed a consultancy only a couple of months when Luzhou Laojiao, which is one of the bigger distilleries in Sichuan, and was actually one of the brands that was my go-to when I lived in Chengdu. They reached out and said, we've been making bye-JYO for several hundred years. We don't need a bunch of foreigners' help making bye-JYO. Thank you very much. But we do need your help selling it to foreigners. So could we create a brand where we are the production and investment side of things, and you are the sales and marketing side of things? Mm-hmm. And this was a really, frankly, like one of a kind opportunity, I think, then and now, because several people had tried exporting bye-JYO before, but no one had done that from a major Chinese distillery with the aim of getting people who weren't Chinese to drink it. Mm-hmm. Most exports of bye-JYO are going straight into either markets serving Chinese businessmen who are traveling overseas, or serving a Chinese diaspora community that's already familiar with the brands that they're buying. Right. Whereas this was a product that they wanted to create specifically to get people who had never heard of bye-JYO to try it for the first time. So it was a really interesting challenge. And so this was about 2016. We spent a couple years R&Ding and developing what became Ming River, and we launched it in 2018.
What sort of maybe attributes separate the Ming River label from other labels made even at the same distillery that make it not just for the market that they're already selling to, but make it more appealing to another market, the American market, I guess?
Well, this was really important to us because we were all coming this from a position of liking bye-JYO and thinking that it was a high quality spirit that just hadn't really been given a fair shake yet. Whereas earlier kind of white label bye-JYO products that entered the market in the US and were trying to get into the cocktail market were mostly, they were marketing themselves as like bye-JYO cleaned up for like a foreign market. Like, we have added flavor, we have lowered the proof, we've made it less funky. For us, we really wanted to celebrate what bye-JYO was because we already liked it. We knew it was possible that if people were confronted with good baijiu, they would like it. So we weren't trying to hide it. And also, like, just on a side note, like, I think it's kind of a losing proposition to say, you know, this drink sucks, but we've made it less sucky. Like,
Right.
That's not a good sales pitch.
I mean, it worked for Domino's Pizza, but like, I have a hard time seeing that translating into the liquor market.
Yeah. So this is something we believed in already, but what we did in terms of making it appealing to the international market and something of a more mainstream product that could be served in bars, it's made the exact same way Luzhou Laojiao makes all of their other baijius. We're drawing from the same raw spirits that they use in all of their other blends. And modern baijius are all blended. So our distillery sells, you know, several dozen blends in China. This is a different one. And the way we got to this particular blend is we went to the bartenders we wanted to work with in New York and Berlin initially, with just a bunch of bottles with different blends in them, and said, will you taste test these 4 samples that our distillers put together? Each of them highlights a different aspect of this style of what's called in China strong aroma baijiu. And tell us what you like, A, B, C, or D. And maybe the feedback came back 50% said A, 50% said D. And we took that feedback back to the master blender, and she gave us 4 more. And every round, we just narrowed down what is that thing that bartenders are looking for in our baijiu until we got that.
Optometrist, and there's
exactly.
Which lens?
Exactly. Just that. So that's how we got to what's inside the bottle. And then I'd say the biggest changes we made are to the packaging itself. In China, baijiu is a single-use product. So oftentimes when you open a bottle of baijiu, you have to physically destroy it.
Yeah.
You cannot reseal it. It's
right. The top cracks, so you can't put the cap back on. So once you open it, you must finish it. That's the rule, right?
Exactly. You never leave any baijiu on the table when a bottle is opened at dinner time. Whether that's 2 people drinking it or 10 people drinking it, everything must go. So
wow.
First of all, it is an intense drinking culture. Yeah. So first thing, we put a cork in it. You can reseal our bottle. That's something revolutionary. The second thing we did really is we took a bottle that was based on a 1980s style that was very popular from our distillery that's made to look like a Chinese lantern. And we added a couple of minor details to make it easier for a bartender to work with. We made it, we extended the neck so you could put a speed pour in it. We put a lip around the top of that neck so it would be easy to grab from a well. This is where my partner's background in bartending came in handy, because they also pointed out that you would want to add some texture to the bottle. So we have some like embossed Chinese characters in the bottle as well that make it easy to grip, even if it's completely soaked. So just a few things. And we worked with a really good label designer who also came up with the custom design for the bottle. A guy, Chris Edmonds in Manchester, from a company called United Creatives that had worked a lot with Compass Box and Brewdog and some other well-known alcoholic products. And we flew him out to Sichuan to our distillery. We took him to some art galleries and just kind of showed him some of the Sichuanese design traditions that we really wanted to be reflected in the bottle. And I think the final and most important thing that we did is we gave it a name that was recognizably Chinese, Ming River, but could be pronounced by someone who didn't speak Chinese, unlike our distillery name, Luzhou Laojiao, which is functionally unpronounceable for most English speakers. So Yeah, we basically had this operational principle that we want this product to be as true to where it comes from as possible, while still servicing the needs of the market we're trying to sell it into.
And that's an interesting question, because I sort of want to I want to ask this because I'm interested in your answer, but also for selfish reasons, because I'm going through something similar, getting an agave nectar company off the ground, that I am the middleman between the families in Mexico that make it and the mostly gringos in this country that use it and drink it and enjoy it. And I love the product, but I am not myself Mexican, and you, Derek, are not yourself Chinese. So I'm just kind of wondering how you feel about your role as kind of a middleman, or possibly even a translator between this, very culturally Chinese product and a very Western majority white market.
Absolutely. And I think translator is the metaphor that we prefer as well, because I don't see myself as someone that has ownership of this category in any way. I very much am very lucky that I was in China at a time that people hadn't been writing about this in the English language, and a lot of distillers and a lot of people who are very passionate about this category were willing to share what they knew with me. And me helping to promote this is hopefully a way that I can give something back to that industry that was so kind to me. But our distillery makes what I think are some of the most complex and amazing spirits in the planet. And it's really just a historical accident that they aren't as famous as Johnny Walker is, because China, for most of its history, has been shut off from the outside world, and it wasn't possible to get this product in the United States in any form before the 1990s, really. But in a way that people can buy at their local liquor store, we're one of the first brands to do that. So for us, I think the operational principle is always to give credit to the people that are making this and the craft and the tradition that's behind this product. If we can help people know more about that, then certainly we're helping them out, and we hope that they find it useful.
Yeah, I it's very unique that China had been cut off from the world for so long, and so that it's kind of remained insular, even though it's so massive. You would think that things would be leaks would be springing out everywhere. But to finally get bye-JYO more recognized on the international stage seems like a real coup and a great move forward for the category. However, I would back up to what we said earlier. It's already the crushingly largest category. Do they need more market share is the question, right?
I think.
Well, there's that, Derek. Can I add a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, sure.
Can you also talk to the supply and demand and what that would mean if it blew up, or worldwide? Like, would the production level be capable? Like, would it So I'll let you answer this now.
Yeah. So the short answer to the first question is I do think maybe in the short term, it's not necessary that people in other parts of the world are drinking bye-JYO to support the industry. It is already a very successful industry in its home market. But I do think in the long term, it is necessary for bye-JYO to find a foothold in a more international mainstream marketplace, simply because it does have that reputation in China as being an old man's drink, whereas young people growing up in China today are exposed to many drinks that their parents and their grandparents were never exposed to. Consumption levels are fairly low among younger generations. And if you ask the older people in China if this is a problem, they say, oh, no, it's not a problem. I didn't drink that much bye-JYO until I was in my 30s and 40s. because it does have that like business connection that like the more advanced you are in the business world, the more baijiu you're drinking. But I do think the baijiu companies themselves are realizing that they might not have as secure a future as they thought they did. So counterintuitively, I think for baijiu to really succeed with younger markets in China, it has to be a viable product in the places where those people are drinking, which are mostly Western style bars and nightclubs. Right. So, this is, I think, necessary to the long-term future. And then in terms of the second question, which is, can the market withstand more demand for baijiu? Absolutely. The value of baijiu is higher now than it's ever been, but the volume is frankly declining quickly. So the production volume of baijiu is 7 billion liters now, but it was 12, 14, 10 years ago. So the industry has the ability to produce a lot more than they're producing right now. And the other kind of sustainability aspect of the baijiu industry that's often overlooked is most baijiu is distilled from sorghum, which is a very drought-resistant crop that's grown in great quantities and mostly used for animal feed. So it's a very easy crop to grow. The United States is the largest producer of sorghum, and you'll see a lot of it if you're driving through our home states, Damon, of Kansas and Oklahoma. But there's other sources. baijiu imports a lot of sorghum out of Australia as well. So there's a pretty limitless supply of sorghum that can be grown.
So it seems like there's almost like a little bit of a conflict with the newer generations coming in, even in China, coming up and drinking more varied products instead of drinking more baijiu. And also, I would kind of correlate those two. I'm sort of mathing out in my head here, but I would correlate those two to say that when they're going to a Western style bar, they're not opening up a bottle of something and finishing it, right? You have a drink of this, and a drink of that, and a drink of this. Have a drink with mezcal, have a drink with tequila, have a drink with whiskey, and then maybe a drink with baijiu now. But maybe some of the decline, you just said 14 billion down to 7 billion, yeah. But that may be because I guess the long question that I'm coming to here is the culture on drinking baijiu changing? You put a cork in your bottle. Are other brands making it so you don't have to finish the bottle when you open it so that they can reach the market there?
Yeah, there's certainly in the last decade been a number of products that have been produced by baijiu distilleries that are trying to target drinkers of other spirits. I was just in Shanghai a couple of weeks ago, and it was my first time in China for a while. And I went to a baijiu focused cocktail bar there that's amazing called Healer. Tried some really cool stuff there that I'd never seen before. And one of I was given a book talk there, and the moderator of this after it showed me he'd made this kind of like bourbon baijiu almond like hybrid product that was really, really good. So it's not a traditional drink, and it wouldn't be considered baijiu in the Chinese market by legal definition, but there's a lot of room to play around with it, certainly. And I think they're already trying to do it in China. I think in many ways we are more flexible to work with it in a non-Chinese market, because most of the people that we are giving tastes of baijiu to the first time aren't bringing those really deep thousands of years of cultural baggage to the experience, aren't thinking that there's like a way that baijiu is served and this is what it is. Whereas people trying it for the first time, if you present them a good baijiu, in a context that they're comfortable drinking it, it's going to be a good first experience, I think.
Yeah,
most of the
Derek,
time.
I mean, this really reminds me a lot. The way you're speaking to this, and you have mentioned 2 or 3 times on the show that, it sells billions and billions of dollars more than Johnny Walker. I'm kind of thinking of it, and you're also talking about being like a business person, lunch, alcohol kind of thing. It kind of reminds me of Western world drinking, like business people drinking scotch, and even in in the United States, like for instance, something's been around for a very long time, rye whiskey. It's like you go back 20 years ago, no one was drinking rye whiskey in the United States except for old dudes who had just always been drinking it. Even ordering a Manhattan, it was very rare that you would find someone with a bottle of rye whiskey behind the bar, just because it was considered kind of like an old man, old timey spirit. And now it's in everything. So I feel like the future of bye-JYO in the greater picture it's just, I was going to say, it just takes a little time, but it's been around for a long time. But it's one of those things where, even products like Sother and Raicilla, they no one knew about them. Even if all you ever had to drink was tequila and then mezcal, and then all of a sudden you've got these other kind of ancestral spirits. It's I just feel like that movement, for the younger generation, they've got to be comfortable drinking it in a cocktail, but then eventually they're going to be like, oh, this is kind of cool. Crushing a bottle at lunch, and it's that kind of gateway into the traditional kind of run of show, I guess, if you will, because to me, I didn't drink whiskey until it took it being mixed into a cocktail for me. Anytime I would do a whiskey shot, I would in my early 20s or whatever, I was just like, man, this is really kind of challenging. And it took even something as simple as a whiskey highball for me to, be like, oh, this isn't killing me. And I can taste every part of it still, there's nothing getting in the way flavor wise. And then, then I kind of backed into drinking whiskey neat. And so I just think you're poised the right time and with the market share and just people, the younger audience drinking a little bit more, experimentally with, cocktails, but then, it's just kind of like we talked at the top of the show, the Negroni, it's a third variation on, just bitters and vermouth. And, it took mixing soda water into it and then gin and then another 100 years for people to, get down with it. And I think you're closer than 100 years from sharing the market. I hope so. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I really hope so. It's just one of those things where I think it does take a lot of time, but more than anything, it has to do with context. So many people are put off of bye-JYO by the way that they first encounter it, whether it's a really cheap bottle that somebody bought at a corner store in China, the cheapest bye-JYOs are $1 a bottle roughly, or it's a really good expensive bottle of bye-JYO that's served to someone who's not ready for it. I mean, if you consider someone's introduction to the whiskey category is someone opening a bottle of Lefroy, putting it on the table and saying, we're finishing this right now. You might not be that receptive to whiskey as a category.
Or friends with that person the next day.
Right. So
I think that a lot of people have that with tequila and gin too, it's
and tomorrow. I think it's kind of a universal feeling.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Good things are only as good as they are, right? So you have to have that first experience, and the experience itself it plays a lot of role. It's not just what's in the bottle; it's where are we doing this? Who are we doing it with? What's the vibe? I think that there's a lot of parallels here, especially as Damon was mentioning, sort of with the agave spirits, tequila and mezcal, and other spirits like Raicilla and Sotol. It seems to me that there's a artisanal aspect to this, and then there's this weird sort of waning. It's like the early days, right? Mezcal was kind of struggling, the younger generations were, not willing to put in all this work to make this product that was not getting sold very much. So they were leaving. And so the numbers of people making were dwindling. It seems like maybe you're in that cycle somewhere where there's a part of this that might be falling from favor. You've gone from 14 billion down to 7, but you've got to reinvigorate it somehow by getting it popularized outside of your own community. And I think that's a pretty interesting task.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, we're just trying to introduce it through the right context. If we can nail that first experience that people have with the category, I think they're going to be looking out for the next bye-JYO that comes around as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's kind of a Trojan horse. Like, we give them a little taste, give them a nice bye-JYO cocktail. And then hopefully we get them in the place where we can have that slamming a bottle at lunch experience with them, get some really screamingly hot Sichuanese food on the table, because that is the way that bye-JYO is intended to be consumed. Bye-JYO is seen as part of the cuisine of the regions that make it. So, when you're having Chinese food, the idea is to have as many different flavors in balance as possible. And without bye-JYO, you're missing some of those flavors. The bye-JYO is very complementary to the local food. So
sure,
we want to get there eventually, but it's going to take some time.
In the cocktail of bye-JYO, right? Food is the mixer.
It can be, but also mixers.
Yeah, well, listen, this is such a fascinating and deep category. I think we could go on forever, but we were limited by time.
Let's have Derek back on the show sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, let's do that.
Where can people follow along and get more information about Ming River so that they can see what's going on with this product?
Well, we're on Instagram at Ming River Baijiu. We have an educational website, a couple of them, if you want to know more. One is Drink Baijiu, that's BAIJIU.com, that has a lot of background on the production, how it's made, how it's traditionally consumed. If you want to learn some table etiquette in addition to learning, about the different styles of Baijiu and how they're made, that's a good place to start. We've even made some free online courses if you want to get really nerdy and deep into it. Courses.mingriver.com. There are tests you can take, but you're not required. You can just check out the materials as well. So those are some good places to go to learn a little more. I should also plug my books, bye-JYO, The Essential Guide to Chinese Spirits, and Drunk in China.
Love it.
Awesome, man. Well, this is nice. I mean, this alone was an educational experience. I now know how to pronounce the spirit, which I apparently was doing wrong before. bye-JYO. It's going to take me a few reps, but I'm going to get there. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. But for now, that's going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. However, if you want more of Damon and Sother and me in your life, please sign up and become a regular on our Patreon page. The regulars here at the Speakeasy get access to a lot of really great stuff, including sponsor-free listening, video podcasts, bonus episodes, cocktail recipes from all of our guests, and a free cocktail kit every single month from our good friends at Shaker and Spoon. Speaking of which, Sother, you're still giving away a bike with them, right?
Yeah, I got involved with Shaker and Spoon, and we're giving away, I have an Aperol Beach Cruiser still in the box, never even got put together. We're giving away the Aperol Beach Cruiser, a Claris clear ice maker, a subscription for 3 months to Shaker and Spoon, some charcuterie from Appy, a beautiful charcuterie board from Hither Lane, a Curita gift card so you can buy some Aperol. The package is worth over $1,400. Go check out my Instagram at Creative Drunk to find multiple ways to enter, and I hope you win the bike. It's a pretty cool package.
Yeah, I hope you do too. And we've got a link to that in the show notes as well. And if you want to see me live and in person, I'm bringing back After Dark Confessions. That's my weird little side project where I dress up like a priest and read the naughty things that strangers have done out loud to a packed bar. We're going to be doing that at Someday Bar in Brooklyn on Indigenous Peoples Day, or Columbus Day, if you prefer. Either way, it's October 14th, and I will see you there. As always, be sure to check out heritageradionetwork.org for many more programs just like this one. And be sure to tune in next week when our guests are going to be Joe and Mary Elena from Bitter Milk. Let me try that again. Bitter Milk. There we go. I'll practice in between now and next week. But for now, until next time, cheers, everybody.
Cheers,
everybody.
So you don't charm the devil with your
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.